What's going on, everyone? Today, Pick 6 back, and I'm going to give you something new. I'm going to give you Battlefield Little Bird and Z11 Scout Chopper highlights that I've gotten over the last recent couple matches, maybe over a week or two. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the latest patch updates and change settings that I agree or disagree. I know everyone seems to be doing it, but I'm going to give a different approach to what I've seen out of it, because a lot of them just say, oh, well, here's the point that's going to happen, and like, what can I do with that? I can read the list myself. I don't need you to commentate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you points that I agree and I disagree with. I'm going to tell you why. And of course, if you disagree with me, or you think I'm full of shit, tell me in the comments. I like engaging with the community, so if you think I'm wrong, at least tell me why. Don't just say, oh, you're wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why you think I'm wrong. If you agree, tell me you agree. So, without further ado, here we go. I noticed that for the shotguns, buck and flechette rounds are now going to have less suppressive effect over longer ranges. And even though video game shotguns are already a lot less than what real life shotguns would do, I agree with this somewhat. Because I've noticed the flechette rounds sometimes would suppress me to the point where I couldn't fight back, but it wouldn't kill me. Like my damage percent would be 60%, but I couldn't fight back. And in a gun with the USAS, where it's pretty much full auto, it's just a nightmare. So I agree with this somewhat. I agree with it to a certain point. I think the biggest factor with regard to shotguns, and I think everyone will agree on this one, is the scaling down and the slowing down of the fire rate of the USAS or any other shotgun when using frag rounds. Those frag rounds were the most overpowered rounds I've seen, well, at least in a shotgun in a video game, in a long time. I remember one time I was going around with a sniper rifle and I actually got outshot by a guy with frag rounds from a USAS. I shut the game off after that. I was furious. So, yep. So they're listening to the community, and those are going to be scaled down, and apparently the fire rate in the USAS with them is going to be scaled down too, so at least there's a change happening there. Next point, apparently they're going to tweak bipod deployment settings, so players can no longer deploy a bipod in places higher than their chin. I really like this point because head glitching is rampant in some levels. It's an absolute cancer in some levels. You can barely see his head and you can't shoot him, so he'll kill you, yet when you see the kill cam, his chest up is completely exposed and he's firing his gun. It's extraordinarily aggravating, and I'm glad they're fixing that. Next point, unguided tank rounds and RPGs will now instantly destroy jets, attack helicopters, and scout helicopters. Again, I highly agree with this one. If you've seen a lot of my videos and the next upcoming videos I'll be posting, when I use a tank without the guided shell, I still have a relatively easy time taking out choppers and other things. But for the most part, I've noticed that even though I hit it dead center or right on the propeller, it's just a disable. Most of the time they crash anyway, but the point is it should obliterate it in one shot, and the patch will fix that. So I'm glad, small little tweak, but I'm glad they fixed that. Again, they fixed a problem with locking onto two nearby targets. The locking should no longer jump rapidly between the multiple targets, and this applies to locking weapons and laser designators as well, and that's nice. Because I've had times where using the javelin, it jumped between tanks, and that's very aggravating. The other thing is, it applies to me in the chopper a lot, because if I'm locking onto a chopper and a jet that happen to be in the same area, if I happen to be facing a good chopper pilot, sometimes that little 2 to 3 second difference of the target fluctuating makes a huge difference, because he gets the first shot now. You deploy your ECM jam or your flares and he gets the next shot, so sometimes to lose because of a glitch is very aggravating. So again, glad they're fixing that one. Apparently they're increasing the damage of the javelin and air-to-ground missiles against laser-designated targets. The javelin was already underpowered. Some people I read online were suggesting it'd be a one-hit kill, and I think that would be just atrociously overpowered. In real life, yes, but this is a video game, and people forget that. You can't have... Because everyone would be running with javelins all the time, and ground vehicles would be useless. So they were underpowered in this update, increasing the damage a bit, so that's maybe 2, maybe 3 if you're hitting it directly on the front would be nice. Javelin missiles fired without laser designating now do more damage to the side and rear of tanks. Sort of what I mentioned before. I think it's a good addition. They're slightly reducing the locking time of all weapons versus laser designated targets. I'm sort of on the fence about this one. The only advantage I see it happening is against enemy jets, because a lot of the times the jets would pass over you too quickly, so you couldn't even designate them. But other than that, I felt it was fine. Laser designated missiles can now be distracted by flares that previously couldn't. I agree somewhat with this one. I'd say an ideal compromise would be an instant disable instead of instant destruction. Otherwise there'd be no way to escape the target with ECM jam, and flares would be rendered useless. And if that was the case, I'd think you'd see everyone with guided shells and everything laser guided running around, and it would be abused. So we'll see how that goes. Apparently they reduced the locking time for anti-air missiles for jets, to make them more viable against enemy air targets. This is one I don't really agree with that much, because when I'm in the jet, I've never really had a problem locking onto things. You just click the brake instead of accelerate, and you can suddenly target anything, whether it's another jet or a chopper. I didn't think this needed to be changed much. The Mi-28, or the Russian chopper, receives upgrades to climbing and yawing abilities. This one I highly agree with, and I felt it was most certainly needed. I'm glad that they're doing this, because when I get the American chopper versus the Russian, I know it's over. I know I'm gonna win. The only way I lose is if a fluke in which their rockets happen to kill me as the driver, which again, that's getting fixed too, so that's nice. My favorite one that they're fixing, and the greasy shits probably won't like this one, but that's fine, I don't care. No more MAV riding. Running into people with the MAV is also leads to the destruction of your MAV, so it's like kamikaze MAVing. I couldn't agree with this more. I felt it was complete crap that a person could sit in their spawn and run around with the MAV killing people all match. Not to mention, just the sound of multiple MAVs in the air from these idiots was so annoying. So, I'm ecstatic that that one's getting fixed. I'm glad they listened to the community on this one. I also agree with their change that you can no longer detonate C4 after you die. So if you plant C4 on a tank but the tank kills you, you can't just spawn and instantly blow up the tank, because that's bullshit. So I'm glad that they fixed that. It should reset when you die. The only thing that shouldn't necessarily reset when you die are the anti-tank mines. And even then some will agree that they probably should be reset. But C4 should definitely reset. The mortar being unable to be deployed in inaccessible areas was also a beautiful change. So now you can't have people tubing like you would in Call of Duty, sitting in an inaccessible area where you can't attack them, because that was crap. So they've listened, they've fixed that, and they've made me slightly happier. Now to the points that I generally disagree with, and there's a few of them. Increasing the damage to the main battle tank's primary weapon does to the front and side armor of enemy battle tanks. Primarily this means one less shot to the front and very good hits to the side could result in a one-hit disable. I don't agree with this one, and I don't agree with it because I felt tanks were already nerfed enough from the last update. Now they're weaker? Doesn't make a ton of sense to me. However, this will probably only end up helping me and other good tank drivers, because it's already next to impossible to get me out of the tank as it is. Giving me one less shot to kill you is only going to help. But the only thing it upsets me about is the fact that now someone can get a fluke disable on me even though I'm the better driver, so that irritates me a bit. Excuse me. They slightly reduced the repair speed of the repair tool. Again, didn't really feel this was necessary. I don't know what the point behind it was. It seems as if every single vehicle is slowly starting to get nerfed. Again, don't agree with it. With the exception of a few guns, I felt they spent too much time going through and fixing individual gun specs. And what I mean by this is, a few of the guns in the game, sure, they were overpowered, some of them had glitches, some of them needed to be fixed, and that's great. I'm glad that they're spending the time to individually go through specs that are good and bad about the guns. But I felt they fixed too many. Some didn't need to be fixed, but they went and fixed them anyway. The AS Val needed extended mags, even though I don't really use that gun, but it seems like every gun was tampered with, and it didn't. Most of them didn't really need to be fixed, especially the sniper rifles. And the next point, the last point, RPGs were fine as they were. Apparently they're really reducing the splash damage, and to be honest, I didn't think that was needed. So I felt, if anything, they needed to be powered up, not reduced. But maybe I'm alone in that one. But those are the changes I thought that needed to be fixed, so let me know if you agree, disagree, and I'll see you later.